At a party with my rich friends, I tried to dance with my wife and kiss her. She replied, "You are not worthy to touch me. Your kiss makes me sick." Everyone laughed, but they quickly shut up when they heard my answer. If you've ever had your dignity body slammed in a tuxedo, congratulations. We should grab a drink sometime, trade war stories, and maybe compare emotional bruises. For me, it happened at the Langford estate, the kind of mansion that makes you feel underdressed even if you're wearing a three-piece suit and self-respect. The driveway alone looked like a car commercial. Ferraris lined up like candy-colored sharks, some guy in a white scarf talking about crypto like it was a religion, and a valet who had the same expression I did, a mix of "how did I end up here" and "is it too late to call in sick to life?" I adjusted my tux, tried to remember which version of myself I was supposed to be tonight: successful tech founder, doting husband, or the guy who pretends the champagne doesn't taste like wet socks soaked in debt. Lydia, my wife, looked stunning, of course. She always did. She had that kind of beauty that made other people stare and made me feel like a prop in my own marriage. The dress was silver, tight enough to make oxygen optional, and every man in the room looked at her like she came with a warranty. She laughed too loud, tilted her head too perfectly, moved like she knew eyes were currency. And the worst part? I used to love that about her. Used to think, that's my wife. Now, it just felt like watching my own commercial, one where I wasn't getting paid. The Langford estate glittered like it was allergic to subtlety. Chandeliers the size of small countries, marble floors that could blind you, and a jazz band playing the kind of music that rich people pretend to understand. The crowd? Oh, you know them. CEOs, influencers, and those serial entrepreneurs who introduce themselves like, "I'm between startups," which is code for "I live on my ex's couch, but own an NFT of a potato." Lydia was in her element, holding a flute of champagne, laughing with a woman who once told me she didn't eat carbs, but definitely devoured souls for breakfast. I told myself, "Caleb, be normal tonight. Don't make waves, don't make jokes, just smile, dance, and survive." So I walked up to Lydia, like an idiot in love, thinking maybe, just maybe, she'd remember we were a team. "Dance with me?" I asked, smiling like a fool who still believed in marriage. She turned, gave me that frozen smile people give to street magicians, the one that says, "I'm not falling for this trick." "Oh, Caleb," she said, voice dripping with performance. "You really want to make a scene right now?" I chuckled lightly, trying to keep it light. "Scene? No, I'm just asking my wife to dance. I'll even try not to step on your ego." Her friends, all sharp smiles and sharper cheekbones, looked at me like I was an uninvited intern. Lydia leaned in, her perfume all citrus and venom, and whispered, "You are not worthy to touch me. Your kiss makes me sick." Then she didn't whisper anymore. She said it loud enough for the chandelier to take notes. The band stopped mid-note. The laughter died. Someone gasped so hard I swear I heard their soul leave their body. The sound of a single olive dropping into a martini glass echoed like a gunshot. I stood there, every eye in the room stabbing into me. And then came the laughter, sharp, fake, expensive. That upper-class giggle that says, "We're too rich for empathy." I could practically hear the credit limits cackling. Now, in moments like this, a normal man might storm out or start yelling. But I was running on pure, humiliation-induced clarity. I smiled, adjusted my tie, looked her dead in the eye and said, "Funny, I was thinking the same thing, but about being your husband." Silence. Absolute, beautiful silence. Someone dropped a glass, and for a second, I thought time stopped just to appreciate my comeback. Lydia blinked, like someone had unplugged her ego mid-update. Her face twisted, the kind of look you see when someone realizes the Wi-Fi went out during their live stream. Her friends froze, unsure if they should laugh or call security. I downed the rest of my champagne in one gulp. God, it burned. The good kind of burn, the kind that tells you you're still alive. Then I set the glass down gently, bowed slightly. Because if I'm going down with grace, and turned toward the exit. Every step across that marble floor sounded like freedom wrapped in embarrassment. The jazz band didn't start up again. Maybe they were too busy Googling how to handle a domestic meltdown in C minor. As I passed through the hall, I caught snippets of whispers. Did he really say that? Oh my God, she humiliated him. Honestly, good for him. And my favorite, from some old guy with a cigar, reminds me of my third divorce. Outside, the night air hit me like a reset button. I loosened my tie, breathed deep, and laughed. Not the happy kind, but the unhinged, what the hell just happened kind. My Uber driver was leaning on the hood of his car, scrolling his phone. He looked up and said, "Rough night, man." I chuckled. "You have no idea." He shrugged. "You want to talk about it?" "Nope," I said, sliding into the back seat. "I want to pretend the last 10 minutes were a deleted scene from someone else's movie." As we pulled away, I could still see the glowing windows of the Langford estate in the rearview mirror, like a glittering haunted house full of bad decisions. I took out my phone, saw 3 missed calls from Miles, my best friend, co-founder, professional voice of reason, and texted him, "You ever seen a man die standing up?" Because I just did. He replied instantly, "On my way. Whiskey or therapy first?" I wrote back, "Both," in that order. When I got home, I peeled off the tux like it was made of disappointment, dropped it on the floor, and collapsed onto the couch. My living room felt different, too quiet, too honest. I could still hear Lydia's words echoing. "Your kiss makes me sick." What a line. Honestly, if she ever wanted to start a career in psychological warfare, she'd be unstoppable. I stared at the ceiling, thinking how strange it is that love can rot from the inside and still look perfect from far away. People always say marriages die slowly, but mine just got assassinated in public. Then again, maybe it was overdue. Lydia had been different for months, colder, sharper, addicted to appearances. She didn't want a husband, she wanted a brand ambassador. I'd ignored the signs because denial pairs nicely with love and a good Pinot. But humiliation has a way of cleaning your windshield real fast. My phone buzzed again, Miles calling. "Hey, buddy," he said when I answered. "So I saw the video." "What video?" I groaned. "The one that's already on Instagram," he replied. "Someone filmed your wife's little performance. It's trending under #tuxedo_breakup." I buried my face in my hands. "Of course it is. You want me to flag it?" "Nah," I said. "Let it live. I want people to know I survived." Miles chuckled. "You're taking this pretty well." "Oh, I'm not," I said. "I'm just too tired to be dramatic." I used all my energy pretending champagne was lunch. We talked for a while, mostly jokes and silence. When we hung up, I poured myself another drink and stood by the window. The city lights blinked like they were in on the joke. Somewhere out there, Lydia was probably basking in the glow of her social victory, not realizing she'd just started something she couldn't control. Because here's the thing about humiliation, it's a currency. And once you learn how to spend it, you can buy back your peace, with interest. I smirked, raised my glass to my own reflection, and said softly, "Here's to sick kisses and stupid parties." Then I turned off the lights, sat back down, and let the quiet swallow me. For the first time in years, I wasn't pretending anymore. I wasn't the husband, the CEO, or the punchline. I was just Caleb Mason, the guy who walked out of a golden room with nothing but his pride, and somehow, that felt like the richest man alive. If someone ever tells you love is blind, just know it also has terrible Wi-Fi and ignores every red flag waving in 4K. 3 years before that humiliation at the Langford estate, I thought I was living the dream. Not the kind where you wake up sweaty and confused, the kind with bonuses, startup buzz, and a woman who made you forget your password to Logic. Lydia Hart. Back then, the name sounded elegant, like something you'd engrave on a wedding invitation, not a legal restraining order. I met her at a charity fundraiser, one of those events where people donate other people's money to feel morally superior. She was standing near the bar, pretending to be fascinated by the menu like she couldn't just order the most expensive wine and call it taste. I was already 2 cocktails deep, trying to impress some investors, when she glanced my way and smiled. You know that kind of smile that makes you forget how vowels work? Yeah, that one. She had this presence, confident, a little mischievous, the kind of woman who could make you believe she cared just by adjusting her earring. We started talking, and before I knew it, we were trading sarcastic jokes like old friends. She laughed at my bad humor, touched my arm when she wanted to seal a compliment, and leaned in just close enough that my brain stopped functioning like a CEO's and started functioning like a middle school crush. The night ended with her writing her number on a napkin. Cliché? Yes, but somehow she made even that feel cinematic. If I'd known that napkin would eventually cost me half my peace and most of my patience, I would have used it to wipe my hands and walk away. But love makes fools out of men who should know better. Back then, I was doing well. My company, Nova Forge, was hitting its first wave of success. My best friend, Miles Grant, and I had started it in my college apartment. Picture two broke 20-somethings living off pizza rolls and caffeine, coding like maniacs, dreaming of one day owning furniture that didn't come with an Allen wrench. We built a product, an AI-based security platform that actually worked, and suddenly, investors started calling, reporters wanted interviews, and my mother finally stopped suggesting I apply at a bank for stability. Miles was the genius coder. I was the face, the talker, the guy who could make a demo sound like the second coming of Steve Jobs. Together, we were unstoppable until Lydia came along, wearing ambition like perfume. She wasn't rich when I met her. That part still makes me laugh. People like her, they start poor but never humble. She worked in PR, which in her case stood for professionally ruthless. She was smart, charming, and terrifyingly good at convincing people to like her. Within weeks, she'd learned my routines, my favorite coffee, the passwords to my emotional vault. She'd call me babe in that drawn-out way that made even my worst days feel cinematic. She made me lunches, not takeout, actual homemade food, neatly packed with sticky notes that said things like "You're amazing. Don't forget to eat. Genius." It was intoxicating. I told Miles one day, "Man, she's different." He gave me the kind of look people reserve for toddlers holding knives. "Different how?" he asked. "Like, good different, or you're about to make a therapist rich different?" But I didn't listen. Of course I didn't. I was in love, or at least heavily intoxicated by admiration and hormones. When you've been grinding for years, sleepless nights, endless meetings, and then someone looks at you like you're not insane for chasing your dream, you latch on. Lydia was my applause in human form. Every success I had, she celebrated louder than I did. Every failure, she spun into motivation. Or so I thought. What I didn't realize was that she wasn't cheering for me. She was betting on me. The first time I saw a crack in her perfect act was subtle. We were at dinner with a few early investors. Nothing fancy, just a steakhouse with prices that made my accountant sweat. One of the investors asked, "So Lydia, what do you do?" She smiled and said, "Oh, I manage public perception, mostly Caleb's." Someone has to make sure the genius doesn't forget his tie. Everyone laughed. I did too, but there was a sting under the humor. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. Like she was already rebranding us as The Mason Show, starring her, co-starring me. Then came the love through logistics phase. Lydia started scheduling my life like I was an app. "Babe, wear the gray suit to the investor brunch. It makes you look more reliable. Don't talk about the college story. It's too startup cliche. Smile more. It's approachable." Every part of me got repackaged, polished, optimized for her vision of success. I told myself it was support. It wasn't. It was branding. I'd married a marketing department with legs. We got married 6 months after meeting. Fast, impulsive, stupidly romantic. The wedding was elegant, simple, and fully funded by me. She cried during the vows. I believed every tear. Miles was my best man, and I swear, when Lydia said, "For richer or poorer," Miles muttered, "Bet she only heard one of those words." I should have paid him royalties for that prophecy. The first year was good, at least on the surface. Lydia was affectionate, funny, always pushing me to dream bigger. We traveled. Paris, New York, Cabo. She'd take pictures of us on rooftops, post them with captions like, "Power couple energy kiss mark sparkles." I thought we were building a life. She was building a following. Our home became a set. Dinner conversations turned into strategy meetings. And somewhere in between the vacations and Instagram posts, I realized my wife didn't love me. She loved the lifestyle I provided. Still, I ignored the signs. Because love, real or delusional, makes denial taste like hope. Then came that moment, one I'll never forget. I was running late for a meeting, tie half on, laptop bag over my shoulder, when she stopped me at the door. "You're always busy," she said, smiling. "It's sexy when men don't have time for their wives." I laughed, kissed her forehead, and said, "You saying I'm sexy or neglectful?" She winked. "Both." I didn't realize that was her thesis statement for the marriage. When you build a company from scratch, you get used to chasing numbers. You measure everything: progress, profit, potential. But you can't measure the moment you lose someone's respect. It doesn't happen all at once. It's gradual, like watching paint peel off a wall you once thought was perfect. Lydia started comparing us to other couples. The Grants are buying a vacation home, she'd say. When do we get ours? Or, Trent got his wife a Tesla. You still drive that boring sedan. I'd tell her, I like my car. It's reliable. She'd smile that tight smile and say, yeah, but reliability's not sexy. That was the shift from love to performance. Every interaction became a transaction. If I brought her flowers, she'd say, who are you trying to impress? If I stayed late at work, she'd say, you love your company more than me. I started realizing she didn't want a partner. She wanted a pedestal, and I was the step stool. Miles noticed. Of course he did. One night, we were having beers in my office after hours. She's changing you, man, he said. You don't even crack jokes anymore. You used to be fun. Now you're like corporate Batman. I rolled my eyes. It's marriage, dude. People mellow out. He laughed. Mellow out. Bro, you used to prank interns by setting their screensavers to Nicolas Cage. Now you schedule your own personality around her mood. I wanted to defend her. I wanted to say he was wrong. But deep down, I knew he wasn't. The worst part? I wasn't even unhappy. I was numb, comfortably trapped in the idea of success. Because on paper, everything looked perfect. Lydia had become the face of our social circle. I was thriving financially, and Nova Forge was expanding faster than we could hire. We'd become the couple people envied, and that envy was addictive. It kept me blind to the rot. Looking back, it's funny how love can feel like security while it's actually stealing your freedom. Lydia made me feel indispensable, but only as long as I kept performing. And I performed well. Until the day I didn't. Until the day I realized that every compliment came with a price tag, and every "I'm proud of you" came with a subtle reminder. Don't stop climbing, or I'll find someone higher. The irony? She thought she'd found a gold mine in me. She didn't realize I was still mining myself. Because I might have been blind, but I wasn't stupid. Something in me, call it survival instinct or male ego, started taking notes. I started noticing how her affection aligned perfectly with my balance sheet. How her love spiked right after good quarters and went silent when cash flow dipped. She wasn't in love with me. She was in partnership with my net worth. And yet I stayed. Because leaving her then would have meant admitting I'd built my own downfall brick by brick. I wasn't ready to see her for who she really was. A brand strategist disguised as a soulmate. So, I did what every self-respecting fool does. I doubled down. 3 years later, I'd find out exactly how much she valued me, down to the last champagne bubble. A woman whose personality could curdle milk chimed in with, "Girl, please, no one blames you. You upgraded smart. You deserve a man who's got momentum, not potential." And there it was, the sound of my ego collapsing in real time. I stood there in the hallway, holding my briefcase like a shield, listening to my wife casually shred our vows while sipping Chardonnay. It wasn't even the words that hurt most, it was the ease. Like this was normal. Like love was a job she clocked into as long as the salary was emotional stock options. Lydia giggled again, that little high-pitched sound she used when she wanted people to adore her. I mean, come on, Serena. I worked too hard on this body to start clipping coupons with a broke husband. I felt my heartbeat slow, not race, not panic, just slow. Like my body decided it didn't want to waste adrenaline on something so inevitable. The truth wasn't new. It was just confirmed. The worst part? I wasn't angry. I was disappointed, like finding out Santa was real but racist. I backed away quietly and slipped upstairs, my brain running diagnostics on every moment we'd ever shared. Every "I love you," every "I'm proud of you," suddenly turned into a script she'd been rehearsing for the cameras that never stopped rolling in her head. I sat on the edge of the bed, the same bed she used to cry in when I worked late, and stared at the wall for a good 10 minutes, trying to figure out how a man who built a company from scratch couldn't see the scam right in front of him. When Lydia finally came upstairs that evening, she acted like nothing had happened. She smelled like expensive perfume and casual deceit. "You're home early," she said with that bright, fake enthusiasm that could have won her an Oscar. "How was your meeting?" "Eye-opening," I said. She smiled, kissed my cheek, poured herself another glass of wine, and scrolled through her phone like my soul hadn't just been mugged downstairs. I watched her laugh at memes, probably about loyalty, and thought, God, she's good. That night, I called Miles. He picked up on the second ring, voice groggy. Bro, it's midnight. What's up? Did Elon Musk buy your company again? Worse, I said. My wife did. He groaned. Okay, talk to me. So I told him. Every word. Every detail. Miles didn't interrupt. He just listened, the kind of quiet that tells you he's about to either hug you or stage an intervention. When I finished, he exhaled like a man who'd been holding his breath for me. I hate to say it, he said, but I told you she had brand manager energy. I know, I muttered. Guess I was the product. There was a pause. Then Miles' tone shifted, serious, deliberate. All right, hear me out. You want to know if she's really in this for love or lifestyle? I sighed. I think we already know. Maybe. But let's test it anyway, he said. Pretend you've lost it all. Fake financial ruin. Let's see if her love has a warranty. At first, I laughed. Hard. Miles, you want me to go broke on purpose? I already did that once. It was called college. But he was dead serious. Not for real. We make it look real. Pull back publicly. Act like the company's tanking. Take some bad press hits. Move to a smaller place. See if she sticks around when the champagne stops flowing. I was quiet. The idea was insane and brilliant. You really think that'll work? Caleb, he said, if she loves you, you'll know. If she doesn't, she'll show. Either way, you'll finally stop living in a Hallmark lie. And that's how the most entertaining financial magic trick in history began. The next few days, we mapped it out like a covert mission. Miles handled the digital smokescreen, fake news leaks, temporary stock dips, rumor circulation about internal restructuring. You'd be amazed how fast the internet can bury your reputation if you whisper insolvency loud enough. I started scaling back everything. Canceled the private chef, sold the Tesla, rented out the penthouse to save money. Lydia pretended to be supportive, of course, because PR was her sport. At first, she handled it well. Too well. She'd hold my hand, sigh dramatically, and say, "We'll get through this, babe. You're so strong." She posted cryptic Instagram stories, sad piano music, quotes about resilience, the whole sympathy bait starter pack. I started realizing she wasn't worried about me. She was worried about the aesthetic of suffering. But beneath the sympathy captions, cracks started showing. She'd stare at bills longer than usual. She stopped volunteering for charity brunches. Her phone lit up with unfamiliar names: Trent Briefcase, Rico PR, Spa Event. And at night, when she thought I was asleep, she'd text with her screen turned low. I wasn't a jealous man, but I was observant. In curiosity, my old friend started pacing again. Then one evening, while I was in my home office, I overheard her on the phone. "No, not yet," she whispered. "He thinks it's just a temporary setback. I'm giving it a few weeks. If things don't bounce back, I'll you know." Pause. Soft laugh. "Please. Of course I'm not going to stay broke. I'm not an idiot." That was the moment something in me shifted. I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt calculation. Cold, clear, and terrifyingly calm. It's like when you've been stuck in a bad dream for years and finally realize you can fly. I walked to the mirror, looked myself in the eye, and said, "All right, Lydia, let's see how loyal your Wi-Fi signal really is when the connection drops." The next morning, I played my part perfectly. I told her investors were getting nervous, that we might have to sell assets, maybe even downsize. She blinked twice, processing, then smiled that PR smile again. "It's okay, babe," she said softly. "We'll get through this. Just don't sell my car, okay?" I wanted to laugh, cry, and applaud her all at once. Over the next week, Miles and I executed the illusion. Nova Forge appeared to be crumbling on paper. Leaked reports, delayed payrolls, even a staged insider source article claiming we were under federal review. Lydia's tone shifted from supportive to strategically distant. She started spending more time at Serena's and less at home. Our texts turned transactional. "Did you pay the power bill?" instead of "good night, babe." It was fascinating. Watching her disinterest grow was like observing a slow-motion breakup sponsored by reality. Miles called it the Discovery Channel Marriage Edition. He wasn't wrong. The night that sealed it came 2 weeks later. Lydia came home late, smelling like perfume that wasn't hers. She tried to tiptoe in, but I was sitting in the dark, sipping whiskey like a noir cliché. "Rough night?" I asked. She jumped. "You scared me." "Yeah," I said. "Guess I'm full of surprises lately." She stammered something about Serena and dinner, then walked past me toward the stairs. I watched her go, the heels clicking on marble like a countdown. I didn't say it out loud, but I knew. She was already halfway gone. That night, I called Miles again. "You were right," I said. He sighed. "I usually am." "What now?" I stared at the ceiling. "Now we see how far she's willing to fall for what she thinks is gold." Because deep down, I wasn't just hurt, I was curious. And curiosity, in my experience, always ends with someone getting burned. If you're going to stage a financial apocalypse, you might as well do it with style. And by style, I mean spreadsheets that look tragic, a fake press leak that smells like tabloid adrenaline, and wardrobe changes that scream downsize without actually making you live under a bridge. When Miles pitched the plan, he delivered it like a heist director, calm, precise, and mildly delighted by the cruelty of human beings. "We don't burn everything down," he said. "We create the illusion of smoke. People panic at smoke. They'll run. And the ones who stay? Those are the ones worth keeping." Honestly, it read like a Valentine to my wounded ego. Step 1. The narrative. Reputation is a story, and if you can control the headline, you control the reaction. So Miles and I wrote the sad saga of Nova Forge. Company under review, leadership transition imminent, investors nervous. We seeded a couple of anonymous tips to a blogger who owed Miles a favor, then let the rumor mill do what rumor mills do best, vomit speculation across the internet. The first hit was small, a concerned source tweet, then a Medium post from a mid-tier tech site. By the third day, the stock ticker started to look like it had taken an interest in self-harm. Watching it drop was oddly satisfying, like seeing a villain trip on his own cape. Step 2. The visuals. People believe what they see. So we adjusted the optics. We sold the flashy cars, not because we needed to, but because narrative needs props. The Tesla went to an auction where a startup CEO bought it and instantly regretted his life choices. The penthouse was temporarily rented. Translation. We staged an Airbnb listing with photos showing an empty kitchen and a fake, urgent relocation note. I started wearing cheaper suits, not because I couldn't afford the Armani, but because the mood called for it. Lydia noticed, of course. She commented once, casually, "Trying the minimalist thing?" And I shrugged like a man comfortable with thrift store chic. The performances were small, mundane things that add up to conviction. If you're faking ruin, you can't be half-assed about it. Half-assed looks suspicious. Step 3. Friends and social currency. Social behavior is currency among our crowd. We quietly asked a handful of employees to post vague LinkedIn updates about restructuring and strategic pivots. Miles called in favors from a PR guy who owed him for a saved app launch, and within 48 hours, our inbox looked like a breakup letter from 1,000 invisible partners. We pretended we were in crisis. Friends pretended to be concerned. Lydia, bless her brand-conscious heart, posted a slow-motion story with piano music and the caption, "Standing together through storms." It was Oscar-worthy, if the Oscars were given out for emotional theater. What she didn't know was which storm she was standing in. Step 4. Lifestyle edits. We canceled subscriptions, paused the chef, and found old invoices that suggested cash flow strain. I moved a few items into storage, not because I couldn't pay my mortgage, but because storage units are wonderfully convincing. Miles made sure there were screenshots of late invoices slotted into a fake internal memo that he leaked to a friendly reporter. Nova Forge faces liquidity issues amid aggressive expansion. The press had a field day. Meeting invites dwindled. People I'd spent years coddling with coffees and favors started deleting me from lunch threads like I had the social equivalent of a cold. It hurt in a way that's hard to describe. Not the sting of real loss, but the strange ache of watching who and what cling to you for convenience evaporate like smoke. There's a brutal clarity in that kind of loss. You suddenly see who loves the idea of you, not you. Step 5. The emotional play. I'm not proud of it, but part of the plan involved performing the role of the quietly defeated man. The worn expression, the distracted half-smile when someone asked how I was. I showed up at events less. I answered texts slower. I let Lydia witness the strain without seeing the strings. That was the key. Make her feel the absence. People don't miss what they never had. They miss what they knew was once theirs. So I let her watch me reseed in public while, privately, Miles and I moved the chess pieces. It felt like cheating and like therapy at the same time. And then there were the small cruelties that are honestly the most effective. A phone call where I pretended to be on hold with a bank, my face pressed to the receiver, whispering about unforeseen liabilities. A staged voicemail from a senior investor expressing disappointment. A fake email from HR about delayed bonuses sent in error and then quickly corrected by a follow-up that said nothing. You'd be amazed at how rapidly people change their tone when you switch from solvent to suspect. Friends who used to ask about my marriage suddenly had questions about my cash reserves. Lydia's "we'll get through this" shifted subtly into "we need to plan for worst-case scenarios." Translation: she was budgeting for an exit strategy. One night, after a press hit that made our quarterly call sound like an apology tour, I sat in my supposedly humble kitchen and laughed until I cried. It was hysterical. I'd spent years building a company, dodging competition, dealing with investors, negotiating contracts, and now a few well-placed whispers had everyone convinced it was over. Miles sat across from me, a bottle of whiskey between us like a peacekeeper. "You okay?" he asked. I shrugged. "I'm fascinated." "Fascinated?" he said, raising an eyebrow. "You've gone from CEO to method actor." "Maybe," I said. "But if we do this right, we'll know the truth. If she leaves when it looks bad, she was never in it for me." Miles nodded slowly. "And if she stays?" he asked. "Then we tell her she's wrong and laugh about it while we get better seats in the theater of life." I smiled grimly. "Right, for science. But even the best plans have messy edges. Things that are manually manipulated always have the risk of going viral without your consent." There was a moment, a small one, like the wing beat of a butterfly, when a junior reporter picked up our story and started asking the wrong questions. Suddenly, regulators were sniffing. Lawyers called. Real employees worried about severance. The illusion, when magnified, threatens to become reality. That was a line we hadn't intended to cross. Miles and I scrambled, putting out controlled statements, scheduling calls with counsel, and reassuring our team that this was a temporary blip. It worked, for the most part. We had to be nimble, like a company and like a con. Most importantly, though, we watched Lydia. She oscillated between the compassionate figure she'd portrayed and someone calculating ROI on love. There were nights she sat beside me, hand on my knee, whispering, "We'll rebuild. Don't worry." And other nights, she was distant, eyes on her phone, thumbs typing sweetness into DM boxes with men who sounded like opportunity. It was a contrast that hurt to witness, but was necessary to see. Human nature reveals itself when convenience evaporates. After 3 grueling weeks of staged headlines and worried investors, something strange happened. NovaForge started to attract real help. An investor we'd never met called, intrigued by the cheap buy-in opportunity. A hedge fund did due diligence and found value in our tech. A quiet acquisition rumor started to float. What looked like collapse looked, to the right eyes, like an opportunity. The stock bounced. Cash reserves looked healthier. We reversed the narrative like a magician revealing the trick. The smoke was contrived. The fire was never real. We reclaimed the headlines, this time with a different tone. NovaForge emerges stronger. Strategic investment secures future. But the best part wasn't the rebound. It was how Lydia responded when the curtain lifted. When our stock rebounded and new investment inked itself across the papers, she returned to me with the same performative warmth, eyes alight, voice soft. She moved back into the life she'd always wanted. The life built on favorable balance sheets and flattering optics. I watched her for a moment, cataloging each tiny gesture, storing the way she said "we" now that "we" meant profit again. She smiled at my supposed resilience and planted a kiss on my cheek that might have once meant something. I kept my face neutral because now I had the data. She'd stuck around during the charade, but she'd also been calculating behind the scenes. She hadn't stayed because love demanded it. She'd stayed because the opportunity to remain desirable in the right circles still existed. In the end, the fake ruin taught me more than any investor pitch ever could. It revealed who loved me as a person and who loved the person my bank account built. It showed me the people who'd call at midnight if I was genuinely in trouble and the ones who texted empathy when it was trending. It was a brutal, expensive lesson in time, in theater, and in dignity. I didn't regret it exactly. I'd wanted clarity, and sometimes clarity is a blade you need to wield. The important thing was the result. I knew now who was worth the fight. Preparation, as it turns out, is an act of self-preservation disguised as revenge. So when Lydia asked me 2 weeks later, standing in our kitchen with that same careful smile, "Are you okay now?" I looked at her, memorized the way her lips curled, and replied simply, "Yes, better than ever." She beamed, satisfied. She thought the show was over. She didn't know the final act had just begun and that I had front row tickets. If you're going to burn your marriage down, do it with class. That was Miles's exact advice over coffee one morning when I told him I was finally done pretending. "If you're going to end it in style," he said, grinning like some unholy mix of therapist and chaos coach. I'd been replaying Lydia's public performance at the Langford estate in my head for weeks. The way her words sliced through the room, the laughter that followed, the way she'd looked at me like I was gum on a Gucci heel. My pride had healed just enough to start itching, and nothing soothes an itch like vengeance executed in a tuxedo. So I planned a party, her dream party. Lydia had always wanted to host a grand gala, the kind that lands on the society pages and turns influencers into unpaid paparazzi. The Langford Charity Gala was her white whale, something she'd gushed about back when we were still pretending to love each other. A night for a cause, she'd said. Something elegant, exclusive, a statement. Ironic, really, because the only cause I cared about now was poetic justice. I wasn't going to just end things. I was going to script the perfect finale. The preparations took weeks. Miles and I worked in secret, which meant me quietly funding every element while Lydia thought the event was being sponsored by donors. I called in old favors, event planners, florists, caterers, even the same jazz band that had gone silent during my public humiliation months ago. It was cathartic. Every invoice felt like a step closer to closure. "You're really paying for your own divorce party," Miles said, shaking his head. "That's a new level of commitment." "I'm not paying for revenge," I corrected. "I'm investing in peace. Expensive, catered peace." Lydia was thrilled, of course. When I told her the event had finally been approved by the sponsors, she squealed and hugged me. First physical contact we'd had in months that didn't feel like a PR stunt. She threw herself into planning like she'd just been cast as the lead in a Hallmark movie. Her lists were endless. Designer invitations, imported orchids, a custom dessert table, inspired by the Langford aesthetic. I let her do it all, nodding approvingly while secretly redirecting every detail to align with my grand plan. Step 1 was the guest list. Lydia thought she'd curated it. CEOs, socialites, micro-influencers with inflated egos and questionable morals. But half the attendees were mine. Former employees, investors, journalists, a few curious competitors, all handpicked by Miles to witness the performance. I wanted an audience that would understand context. The rest of the list? The kind of people who feed off drama like oxygen. Step 2 was optics. I made sure every camera, every corner, every angle of that glittering hall was covered. Miles even hired a discreet videographer to capture moments for the charity highlight reel. Translation: document Lydia's empire crumbling in 4K. "You sure about this?" Miles asked when we reviewed the setup. "Oh, I'm sure," I said. "If humiliation is art, I'm going full Picasso." The night arrived like a prom for narcissists. Lydia floated around in a gold gown that looked like it had been spun from envy. Every head turned when she entered, mine included, though mostly from habit. She sparkled, laughed, posed for photos, whispered to her clique about making an impact. Watching her, you'd never know she was one snide comment away from unemployment and alimony. I stayed in the background, playing my role, supportive husband, silent investor, the man behind the scenes. Let her shine, I told myself. The brighter the light, the bigger the shadow when it all collapses. Dinner was exquisite. People toasted to causes they couldn't spell and complimented dishes they couldn't pronounce. Lydia gave a speech halfway through, emotional, rehearsed, full of buzzwords like resilience, partnership, and community. She thanked my incredible husband, who believed in this vision even when times were hard. The room applauded. Miles nearly choked on his wine. I smiled and clapped too, because sometimes the best revenge is patience disguised as applause. After dessert, the music swelled and people drifted to the dance floor. I signaled Miles. He nodded, subtle as a thief. It was time. See, The beauty of having control over an event is that you also control the timing. At precisely 9:45, while Lydia was mid-conversation with a local socialite about influence alignment, the main projector lit up the far wall. The video began, a sleek montage of Nova Forge's journey, supposedly for charity recognition. Except the closing slide wasn't our company logo. It was Lydia. Photos, quotes, and text messages she'd forgotten existed, pieced together like a poetic indictment. Her private messages with Trent, the friend she swore was harmless. Her voice, recorded saying, "I didn't marry him to start over." Miles had edited it like a documentary, tasteful, undeniable, devastating. The room fell silent. Forks froze midair. The same jazz band that had stopped playing the night she humiliated me? They stopped again, right on cue. Lydia's eyes widened as the color drained from her face. "Caleb," she whispered, "what is this?" I took a sip of champagne and replied calmly, "Transparency. It's good for charity." The silence cracked. Gasps, whispers, the rustle of judgment moving through moneyed air. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." Another said, "That's her?" It was like watching a tower of cards fold in slow motion. Lydia turned toward me, trembling, eyes darting like a cornered animal. "You did this," she hissed. "You're ruining me." I smiled. "No, Lydia, you did that yourself. I'm just providing the venue." She stormed toward the stage, heels clicking like gunfire, and yanked the microphone from its stand. "This is fake," she screamed. "It's all lies." But the video behind her kept looping, her own voice betraying her. The contrast was brutal, her denial against her confession. The room watched, fascinated, horrified, entertained. Wealthy people love nothing more than a scandal they can discuss in passive-aggressive sympathy. Security stepped forward, unsure whether to intervene or offer popcorn. Lydia's hands shook. She dropped the mic, the sound echoing like a final verdict. The crowd didn't clap. They didn't move. They just stared. That's when I stepped forward, calm as a surgeon. "Thank you all for attending," I said, taking the mic gently. "Please enjoy the open bar. It's been a night about honesty and generosity." I paused, letting the weight of the moment sink in. My wife and I will be parting ways, both personally and professionally. Effective immediately. Miles once told me revenge is sweeter when you don't raise your voice. He was right. The quiet dignity of walking away while the other person implodes? That's vintage. I set down the microphone, gave Lydia a polite nod, and walked straight out of the ballroom. The silence behind me was deafening, like the pause after a judge says, "Guilty." Outside, the night air was sharp and clean, like fresh paper. My car was waiting. Miles followed a minute later, still laughing softly. "Holy hell, Caleb," he said, sliding into the passenger seat. "That was necessary," I finished. "Therapeutic, maybe. Cinematic, definitely." He shook his head, still grinning. "You know this is going viral, right?" I smirked. "Good. Let her be famous for something authentic for once." As we drove away, the Langford estate shimmered in the rearview mirror, all golden lights and false promises. I rolled down the window, let the wind hit my face, and exhaled the last bit of bitterness clinging to my lungs. That night wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about closure. Lydia had taken my reputation once. I'd taken back my narrative. The irony? The event was still technically a charity gala. The cause? My peace of mind. Back home, I poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed one to Miles, and toasted silently. He raised his glass. "So what now?" he asked. I shrugged. "Now I serve her the papers." He blinked. "Tomorrow." I grinned. "No, Miles. Breakfast. Divorce papers are like grenades, small, quiet, and devastating when they land where they're supposed to. Mine were served with avocado toast. Lydia was still asleep that morning, sprawled across the California king like a queen between conquests. I set the tray beside her. Breakfast, a single mimosa, and a neatly sealed envelope labeled "For you." It wasn't poetic. It was punctual. She stirred, smiled that still half-asleep smile, then saw the envelope. "What's this?" She mumbled. "Closure," I said, pouring myself coffee. "Goes well with citrus." She tore it open, skimmed the first page, and laughed. An honest, shocked laugh. "Divorce? Really? You're finally doing it." Her tone wasn't sad. It was relief. Like I just told her she could take off an itchy sweater. "Finally," she said again, shaking her head. I can breathe. I leaned on the counter, sipped my coffee, and replied, "Hold your breath. You'll need it later." That was the last thing I said before walking out of that house for good. She didn't even follow me, just sat there, flipping through the paperwork like a bored shopper skimming a receipt. The thing about narcissists is they don't panic when you leave. They panic when they realize you're not coming back. By the end of that week, my attorney called to confirm she'd signed without protest. No negotiation? I asked. None, he said. Her lawyer said, quote, "She's thrilled." I chuckled. Good. Let's give her something to celebrate then. Within 2 weeks, Lydia moved in with Trent, one of our rich friends. A human Rolex. He was the kind of guy who called waiters chief and wore sunglasses indoors. I remember when Lydia first introduced us at a launch party years back. She'd said, "Trent's an investor, he's brilliant," and Trent had shaken my hand while staring over my shoulder at someone more important. The man had charisma the way a vending machine has soul. Lydia probably thought she'd leveled up. Richer man, fewer emotional expectations. The only problem? Trent's money was inherited, not earned. There's a difference between men who build their wealth and men who accidentally get born into it. I wasn't jealous. I was curious, because people like Lydia always confuse a new stage for a new story. But every stage still needs lighting, and I just switched hers off. While she was redecorating Trent's penthouse, I was redecorating my life. The first order of business? Rebuilding Nova Forge quietly. The collapse we'd faked for months had served its purpose. The snakes were gone, the dead weight dissolved, and the loyal few who'd stuck around became partners in the rebirth. The so-called bankruptcy had been a transfer. Assets, equity, patents, all moved under a new structure that I controlled from the shadows. The media thought Nova Forge was gasping for air. In reality, we were installing oxygen tanks. Miles called it Operation Lazarus, and honestly, it felt divine. We brought in new investors, the kind who didn't need champagne to believe in numbers. Within a month, the company's valuation bounced back with a vengeance. Not that the public knew. We kept it under wraps, letting the rumors of failure circulate. It gave us cover, freedom, leverage. Then, out of nowhere, a global cybersecurity firm made a move, a $400 million strategic investment. My cut, generational. The same week, Lydia posted a photo of herself sipping champagne in Trent's penthouse, captioned "New Beginnings." I signed documents that made me richer than I'd ever been. I didn't post about it. I didn't even tell my mother. I just sat in my office, feet on the desk, watching the stock graph climb like a phoenix, flipping everyone off on its way up. Miles came in with a bottle of whiskey, grinning. "So officially back?" he asked. I smirked. Officially invisible. Because here's the truth. I didn't just want to win. I wanted peace. Lydia had turned our life into a stage show, and I was done performing. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't buzzing with meaningless dinner invites or fake check-ins. No one wanted favors or access. Silence never sounded so expensive. Still, I'm not made of stone. I checked her Instagram once in a while. Couldn't help it. Lydia was thriving, or pretending to. Photos with captions like "Love always wins kiss mark" and "Grateful for growth." She looked happy, radiant even. But something in her eyes had changed. That desperate sparkle of someone auditioning for happiness instead of living it. Trent looked smug beside her, always in tailored suits that fit too well and smiles that didn't. The comments were the usual: power couple goals, queen energy. Meanwhile, I was on the other side of the screen, sipping bourbon and laughing softly to myself. "Careful, sweetheart," I muttered. Fairy tales look good until the castle's under foreclosure. Then came the twist I didn't plan, but definitely enjoyed. A mutual friend called one night. "You seen the news?" she asked, voice dripping with schadenfreude. "Trent's firm, under investigation for fraud. Turns out, Mr. Rolex was embezzling from his trust fund to keep up appearances." I nearly choked on my drink. "Wait, the man who once lectured me about financial discipline," I said, laughing. "The same one," she replied. "And guess who's been subpoenaed as a witness because she's living in his penthouse?" I didn't even hide my grin. Karma had apparently decided to put on heels and sprint. Lydia, who'd married comfort and insulted commitment, was suddenly on the evening news as a person of interest. The same tabloids that once worshipped her social glow now speculated about her future like vultures around a carcass. Miles texted me a link to the article with one line: "You can't script this better." But here's the thing, I didn't gloat. Not really. Revenge is fun until it's done. Then it's just noise. What I wanted wasn't her suffering. It was my silence back. So I went ghost. Changed my number, deleted her contacts, and left town for a while. No closure dinner, no final message. Just a quiet exit. My therapist later called it detachment. I called it the disappearing act. I moved into a new place. Nothing flashy, just a penthouse downtown with good light and no ghosts. I filled it with books, plants, and peace. Nova Forge ran smoothly under Miles's direction, and I consulted from the sidelines. I started cooking again, running again, sleeping again. It's weird how peace feels awkward when you're used to chaos. You start waiting for noise that never comes. Then one evening, while I was pouring myself a drink, the doorman buzzed. "Mr. Mason? A delivery for you." I frowned. "From who?" "No name, sir." He brought it up, a white box, small, neatly tied with a gold ribbon. Inside, a single key and a note that read, "Thought you might want your house back. Trent." I laughed so hard I scared the plant. Apparently, after Trent's legal disaster, his assets were being liquidated, including the penthouse Lydia had moved into. The house she'd once mocked me for being too modest to keep was now mine again, by technicality. I didn't even want it. But symbolism is delicious. I mailed the key back with a single post-it. "Keep it. I'm allergic to bad decisions." Weeks later, Lydia tried to reach out. Emails, calls, even a handwritten letter. I ignored them all. I didn't need her apologies. I didn't want her explanations. I didn't even want her guilt. I'd moved past her, and the version of me who tolerated her. Miles asked one night, over drinks, "Do you ever miss her?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "No," I said finally. I missed the version of myself who believed her. That guy was naive, but he was hopeful. I kind of envy him. Miles nodded, then raised his glass. "To the disappearing act," he said. I clinked mine against his. "And to staying gone." That's the thing about leaving a toxic person. They expect you to come back for the sequel. But I was done being anyone's character arc. The story was finished. Lydia had her chaos, and I had my peace. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Karma doesn't knock. It waltzes in wearing designer heels, holding a glass of wine, and smiling like it RSVP'd months ago. Lydia found that out the hard way. 2 months after our divorce, while she was busy pretending Trent's penthouse was her new kingdom, the universe decided to RSVP itself right into her perfect little fairy tale. I wasn't tracking her, not actively anyway, but bad news has a way of finding me. Miles and I were in the middle of a strategy meeting when his phone pinged. He glanced down, smirked, and said, "You might want to sit down for this one." I leaned back, suspicious. "If it's a meme, I swear." "No," he said, holding up his phone. "It's better. Trent's wife is back." I blinked. "His what?" "Oh yeah," Miles said, barely holding in his laughter. "Apparently, Mr. Rolex forgot to finalize his divorce paperwork before playing house with your ex." He slid his phone toward me, and there it was, a gossip headline complete with paparazzi photo. "Socialite returns home to find husband and mistress toasting in her living room." I swear, the laugh that came out of me sounded like therapy in physical form. "You're kidding," I said between breaths. "She didn't know?" "Oh, she knows now," Miles said. "And she's not the quiet type." Turns out, Trent's wife, Clara, wasn't just some society ornament. She was smart, ruthless, and the legal owner of the penthouse Lydia had been redecorating. And she came back from London with lawyers, a toddler, and an attitude that could sterilize a room. According to the report, Clara walked in mid-champagne toast, Lydia wearing one of her robes, Trent looking like a deer who'd just realized hunting season wasn't over. Clara apparently stood there for a solid 10 seconds, processing the absurdity of it all, before setting down her luggage and saying, "You're in my apartment, with my husband, drinking my wine. Get out before I call security or Satan, whichever comes first." I didn't plan it, but I couldn't have scripted it better. Lydia tried to argue, of course. Probably used her confident woman voice, the same one she'd used to scold baristas and ruin dinner parties. But Clara wasn't having it. "Honey," she said sweetly, "this entire building is mine. You're standing on my mortgage." Then she turned to Trent and said, "And you're standing on my last nerve." Apparently, security escorted Lydia out while she screamed about misunderstanding and manipulation. I like to imagine she threw a heel at someone. Poetic symmetry. By the next morning, gossip blogs had the photos. Lydia, hair messy, face blotchy, clutching a designer bag that looked more confused than she did. The captions were merciless. Gold digger evicted from love nest, and Trent and his mistress caught in 4K. I didn't celebrate. Okay, that's a lie. Miles and I might have toasted. Here's to poetic justice, he said, raising his glass. And to wives with timing. For a week, Lydia went radio silent. No posts, no selfies, no pity quotes about strength. I almost missed her dramatics. Almost. But then the silence broke. Serena, her best friend and full-time rumor factory, started posting cryptic stories. Some people only show their true colors when you stop painting their lives for them. One said, written in pastel cursive. Another said, real queens rebuild their thrones. Miles sent me the screenshots. So, when's the Netflix series dropping? A few days later, I got an email from Lydia. Short, awkwardly polite. Subject, hi. Caleb, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Things with Trent weren't what I thought they were. You were right about him. About everything. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to apologize. L. I stared at it for a long moment. It wasn't remorse, it was damage control. She'd hit rock bottom and realized it wasn't marble. I didn't reply. There's no dignity in responding to ghosts. 2 days later, Miles called. You're trending, he said. Excuse me. He laughed. No scandal. Relax. Someone leaked photos of you at the tech summit, looking all stoic and mysterious, and the caption says, Caleb Mason, the one that got away. Lydia's fans are turning you into a folk hero. I groaned. Perfect. I survived one circus just to be cast as the next show's main attraction. Come on, he said. You gotta admit, it's kind of poetic. It was. And maybe I didn't hate the attention. There's something satisfying about going from public humiliation to public fascination. But deep down, it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about peace. Lydia was gone, Trent was ruined, and I was finally unbothered. But peace has a sense of humor. A month later, I ran into Clara. I was at a hotel rooftop bar in Midtown, nursing a whiskey and pretending to read an email when she sat down at the table next to mine. She looked exactly like I'd imagined. Sharp, confident, eyes that said I've survived worse men than him. She glanced over and smiled. Caleb Mason, right? The ex-husband of my ex-husband's mistress. I nearly spit my drink. That's quite an introduction. She laughed. Sorry, I've just been dying to say that out loud. We started talking about business, about betrayal, about how both of us had front row seats to the same disaster from different angles. Clara had that rare kind of wit, dry, unfiltered, lethal. She told me about the day she walked in on them, how Lydia screamed about boundaries, and how she calmly called building security like she was ordering takeout. I didn't even yell, she said proudly. I just pointed to the door. That's when I knew I'd evolved. I couldn't stop laughing. You might be my new favorite person, I said. Careful, she replied. My type tends to ruin people's lives. We met again a few days later. And then again. Not romantic, not yet. Just two people with matching scars, clinking glasses over shared absurdity. She told me she was finalizing her divorce and starting a new venture in real estate. I told her I'd rebuilt Nova Forge and was enjoying my quiet life. You're handling it better than most men would, she said one night. I had a good therapist, I said. You mean whiskey? Exactly. Eventually, we started laughing more than we talked about our exes. And that's when I realized healing doesn't always come with deep conversations and forgiveness. Sometimes it comes with good cocktails and someone who's fluent in sarcasm. Lydia, meanwhile, was living her own reality show. Rumor had it she'd been blacklisted from a few social circles. Apparently, people don't like being photographed next to scandal. Serena dumped her, too, after discovering Lydia had maxed out her Amex for emergencies. She tried going back to PR, but found that reputation management is tricky when your face screams, case study. One evening, Miles sent me a photo. Lydia working at an event, not as a guest, but as staff. She was managing guest check-ins for a luxury brand, wearing the company polo, her name tag clipped on like irony incarnate. I didn't feel joy. I didn't even feel pity. Just closure. Clara called later that night. You heard? She asked. Yeah, I said. Wild world. She'll land somewhere. Clara said. People like her always do. Maybe, I said, sipping my drink. But this time, she's not landing on me. She laughed softly. Cheers to that. I hung up, looked out over the city, and realized something. Revenge might have started the fire, but peace kept it burning. Lydia had taught me everything I never wanted to learn about greed, love, and pride, and somehow I was grateful. Not because she broke me, but because I finally knew what it meant to build myself without needing applause. Some nights, I still think about that first party. The humiliation, the laughter, the sharp sting of her words. But it doesn't hurt anymore. It's just a story now. A funny one at that. The night I became a punchline, only to end up writing the script. There's something poetic about life humbling people who once treated humility like a disease. For Lydia, that poetry came in the form of a grease-stained apron, a pot of burnt coffee, and the sound of "order up," echoing through a diner that smelled like regret and old bacon. I didn't have to see it to picture it. Someone like her was never built for fluorescent lights and minimum wage. But apparently, karma had a wicked sense of humor and a perfect sense of timing. The gossip grapevine did its job as usual. It started with a phone call from Serena, of all people. "Don't hang up," she said before I could say hello. "I just thought you'd want to know what happened to Lydia." "Pretty sure I don't," I said, stirring my coffee. "You will," she teased. "She's working at the Silver Spoon Diner downtown. You know, the one with the flickering neon sign and the world's saddest pancakes." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my mug. "You're lying." "Wish I was. I saw her. She served me coffee. Burn it, too. Guess she's consistent." Then Serena lowered her voice dramatically, like she was narrating a true crime episode. She looked bad, Caleb, like she lost a fight with reality. I thanked her for the unsolicited schadenfreude and hung up. But later that night, curiosity got the better of me. Not because I missed her, I didn't, but because sometimes you need to see the ending to fully close the book. So, a few days later, I walked into the Silver Spoon. It was one of those places that hadn't been renovated since optimism was in style. A bell jingled as I pushed open the door, and the smell of fried nostalgia hit me in the face. A waitress shouted, "Seat yourself," without looking up from her pad. The booths were cracked, the menu was laminated, and a small TV in the corner played a morning show that no one cared about. And there she was, Lydia Mason. Sorry, Lydia whatever she's calling herself now. In a pale blue uniform that looked 2 sizes too big and a name tag that said Liddy. I almost laughed out loud. Liddy, the woman who once practiced signing checks with diamond pins, was now wearing sensible shoes and refilling ketchup bottles. She didn't see me at first. She was too busy balancing a tray and pretending not to hate her life. Her hair, once salon perfect, was tied up in a messy bun that screamed surrender. The same hands that used to wave champagne glasses now trembled slightly as she poured coffee for a trucker who didn't even look up. When she finally turned and saw me sitting in the booth, her face froze. It was like watching her brain crash and reboot. "Caleb," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I smiled politely. "Morning, Liddy. Can I get the pancakes, or is that too emotionally complicated?" Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. She glanced around, maybe hoping this was a prank show. Then she swallowed and muttered, "Table 7, right?" Her professionalism kicked in like muscle memory. She brought me a mug of coffee. It was bitter, overbrewed. Perfect. "So," I said casually, "how's the new job?" "Steady tips." She flinched at my tone, then straightened. "I'm working. That's what matters." "Sure," I said. "Work builds character." "You're practically glowing." Her eyes narrowed. "You came here to mock me?" "No," I said, sipping the coffee. "That's just a bonus." For a moment, she looked like she might throw the pot at me. But then something broke, something in her posture, her expression. Her voice cracked. "I made mistakes, okay?" I set the cup down. "Yeah, several." In high definition. She took a deep breath, clutching the coffee pot like it was a lifeline. "You don't understand. Trent lied to me. He promised me." I held up a hand. "Lydia, please. I'm not your therapist. And honestly, if this is the part where you explain your villain origin story, save it for the lunch crowd." Her face fell. For a second, I thought she might cry. But Lydia never cried in public, not even when she was caught lying on camera at her own gala. No, she just stood there, chin trembling, and whispered, "You really hate me, don't you?" I leaned back, looked at her for a long moment, and said, "I don't hate you, Lydia. I just stopped caring. That's worse, isn't it?" She didn't answer. She just nodded slightly, turned, and walked away. When she left, I noticed something small and tragic. Her shoes had worn down at the heels. The same woman who once judged me for wearing the same watch twice was now surviving shifts that left blisters. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just felt nothing. And that nothing felt like freedom. The TV above the counter flickered just then. A news segment came on. NovaForge CEO Caleb Mason announces record-breaking rebound. My face flashed across the screen mid-interview, talking about innovation, leadership, and growth. I looked up at it, then back at Lydia. She was standing frozen by the counter, a pot of coffee in one hand, staring at the screen like it was an apparition. The anchor's voice echoed through the diner. After months of speculation, the company has returned stronger than ever under Mason's leadership. A customer waved at her. "Hey, sweetheart. Refill." She didn't move. "Sweetheart," the guy repeated. She blinked, forcing herself back into motion. "Right?" she murmured, pouring mechanically. The coffee overflowed, spilling onto the table. The man cursed. "What the hell, lady?" "I'm sorry," she stammered, grabbing napkins. Her manager, a stocky man with an eternal frown, rushed over. "Liddy, pay attention, for God's sake." She apologized again and again, but her eyes never left the TV. My face was still there, smiling, calm, whole. I watched quietly, then tossed a $100 bill on the table and stood up. She saw it, her eyes flicking between the cash and me. "You don't have to." "I know," I said. "It's for the coffee, not the conversation." And then I walked out, the bell above the door jingling like applause. Outside, the sun hit different. Maybe it was the clarity. Maybe it was just the fresh air after years of toxicity. Either way, I stood there for a moment, looking back at the diner. Through the fog glass, I could still see her silhouette, small, tired, still clutching that coffee pot like she was afraid to put it down. That's when I realized something important. I didn't ruin Lydia. She did that all by herself. All I ever did was stop saving her. A week later, Miles asked me, "Did you ever go see her?" "Yeah," I said. "Once." He raised an eyebrow. "And she's fine," I replied. "Well, functionally breathing, anyway." He grinned. "You feel better?" I thought about it. "No, I just feel done." That's the thing about revenge. People think it's about payback, but it's not. It's about closure. About turning a chapter so cleanly that you stop rereading it in your head. Lydia went quiet after that. No posts, no calls, no more sightings on the gossip sites. I heard she eventually quit the diner and moved back to her parents' small town. Maybe she's still there, telling herself she was misunderstood. Maybe she's planning her comeback. Maybe she's just human now. Whatever the case, it's not my story anymore. One night, sitting on my balcony with a glass of whiskey, I scrolled through an old photo album, back when Lydia and I were still pretending to be in love. There was one photo of us laughing, her arms around my neck, my face half turned toward her. For a moment, I almost felt nostalgic. Then I zoomed in and noticed something I'd missed before. Her eyes weren't on me. They were on the camera. I closed the album, poured another drink, and toasted to the silence. Sometimes, peace doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from finally being unreachable. There are moments in life when irony doesn't just knock on your door. It shows up wearing your ex-wife's perfume, holding a half-baked apology, and pretending it's fate. 2 weeks after the diner incident, I was in my office, minding my own business, sipping overpriced coffee that actually tasted like success this time, when the front desk buzzed. "Sir," my assistant said hesitantly, "there's someone here to see you." I didn't even look up. "Tell them I'm in a meeting." She hesitated. "It's your ex-wife." Now, I'd heard that phrase in nightmares, but hearing it in real life? That was new-level horror. I set down my cup and asked, as calmly as possible, "Which one?" She laughed nervously. The only one on public record." Figures. Lydia had a knack for timing, always showing up right after the credits should have rolled. "Send her in," I said, leaning back in my chair. I wanted to see what poverty did to humility. A few seconds later, she walked in, and I'll admit, it was jarring. The woman who once treated appearances like religion looked completely different. No design or anything. No makeup so heavy it required engineering. Just jeans, a sweater, and exhaustion. Her eyes were red, not from crying but from life. Caleb, she whispered. I smiled faintly. Lydia, or should I say Liddy? Depends on which name tag you're using these days. Her face twitched. Please don't. I gestured toward the chair. Sit. Unless standing gives you the moral high ground, in which case, by all means, hover. She sat down slowly, her hands shaking. I know you don't want to see me. Correct. But I had to. Incorrect. She swallowed hard, her voice trembling. I just want to talk. I leaned back, lacing my fingers behind my head. That's new. You used to prefer public monologues. Her eyes filled with tears. Please, Caleb. I don't care about money. I don't care about. I held up a hand. Stop. You're repeating yourself. You always start with I don't care about money, and somehow end with a Venmo request. That one hit her. She looked down, took a breath, and said quietly, I just want you to know I'm sorry. I tilted my head, studying her. There it was, the apology. The sentence I used to dream about hearing. Except now it sounded small. Late. Like a half-off clearance version of closure. What exactly are you sorry for? I asked. For saying my kiss made you sick? For making me a public joke? For trading vows for stock options? Be specific. I'm a details guy. She winced. All of it. That's a lot to fit under one sorry. I know. She finally met my eyes. I was wrong, Caleb. About everything. About you. About what mattered. I thought I wanted a certain kind of life. And I got it. But it turns out it's hell when you have no one left to share it with. I smirked. Tragic. Write that down for your next Instagram caption. She ignored the jab. I saw the interview, she said softly. The one on CNBC. You looked happy. I said. Still am. Turns out, peace looks good on me. She nodded slowly, tears threatening again. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know I finally understand what I did. Do you? I asked. Because understanding requires growth, and last I checked, you've been living off recycled apologies and pity tips. Her lip trembled, but she didn't snap back. She just whispered, I deserve that. I blinked. Excuse me. I said I deserve that, she repeated. Every word. Every consequence. I thought I could build happiness by trading people for things. I was wrong, and I've paid for it. She paused, her voice breaking. I'm still paying. I sat there, silent. I wasn't expecting sincerity. Not from her. Not after everything. But there it was, raw, unfiltered, unbranded emotion. It almost threw me off balance. Almost. Lydia, I said after a long pause. You once told me my kiss made you sick. Her face crumpled. I know. So tell me, I said, leaning forward. What do you want from the man who made you nauseous? She laughed through her tears, a pathetic, broken sound. Nothing, she said. Just a chance to tell you I'd give anything to go back. I stood up slowly, walked around the desk, and stopped in front of her. She looked up, eyes wet, lips trembling. Caleb, I smiled, leaned in just close enough for her to remember what it used to feel like, and whispered, let's keep you healthy. Then I straightened and pressed the intercom button on my desk. Security, I said evenly, escort MS. Mason to the exit. She's allergic to decency. Her eyes widened. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm dead serious, I said. For once, you're not the star of the show. Just the rerun no one asked for. 2 security guards appeared within seconds. She stood up, still trembling. Please, Caleb. I'm not that person anymore. Sure, I said. But unfortunately, I don't do remakes. They guided her toward the door. As she walked out, I added casually, and make sure she doesn't catch feelings on the way down. She froze at the threshold, turned around, and whispered, You really hate me, don't you? I shook my head. No, Lydia. Hate would mean I still care. Her face fell completely, and for the first time, she didn't have a comeback. No dramatic exit, no insult, no scene. Just silence. She walked out quietly, the door clicking behind her. For a long moment, I stood there, staring at that closed door. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt done. Like someone had finally turned off the background noise in my head. Miles poked his head in a few minutes later. I heard security called. Tell me it wasn't another intern who messed up your coffee order. I chuckled. Nope. Just an old ghost looking for airtime. He grinned. You good? Better than good, I said. I think I just buried the last of it. Finally, he said. Because honestly, she's been living rent-free in your head for too long. I smiled faintly. Not anymore. Eviction's complete. He raised an eyebrow. You didn't do anything dramatic, did you? Define dramatic. He groaned. What did you say to her? Nothing cruel, I said. Just the truth. She came here looking for forgiveness, and I gave her honesty instead. He clapped me on the shoulder. Damn, man, you've officially evolved. I looked out the window, the city stretching beneath me like a living pulse. Yeah, I said softly. I finally stopped chasing closure. I just built it. Later that night, I got home, poured a drink, and sat on the balcony watching the skyline. The air was crisp, the whiskey was smooth, and the world finally felt balanced again. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. I didn't recognize it, but something told me not to block it. The message read, "Do you ever think about me?" I stared at it for a while, then smiled. I typed a single word back, "No?" Then I hit block and set the phone face down. I lifted my glass to the night and said quietly, "Here's to the sickened kisser. May she find someone else's lips to ruin." The wind carried the laughter away, and for once, it didn't echo. You ever reach that point in life where revenge feels too exhausting to bother with, so you just sit back, pour yourself a drink, and let karma clock in for the night shift? That was me. The city glittered outside my window like it had been waiting for me to finally shut up and enjoy it. Nova Forge was thriving, my piece had tenure, and Lydia had officially become yesterday's problem. I thought I was done thinking about her, until the universe decided to give me one last encore. It started innocently enough. Miles came over that evening with his usual bottle of whiskey and an even bigger grin. "You know," he said, dropping onto my couch, "I didn't think you'd actually pull it off." "Pull what off?" I asked. "This whole Zen master after a divorce thing. You're like the poster boy for emotional detox. You don't even rant anymore." I smirked. "Ranting's for amateurs. I outsource my bitterness to karma now." He poured us both drinks. "So what's next? You've got money, fame, closure. You gonna write a self-help book?" I raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, it'll be called She Said My Kiss Made Her Sick. The Power of Emotional Disinfection." He burst out laughing. "That's actually brilliant. I'd read that." We clinked glasses. The silence after the laughter was comfortable, the kind that doesn't need words. Miles leaned back, staring out at the skyline. "You know, Caleb," he said, "you could have destroyed her completely. Like scorched earth level. But you didn't." I shrugged. "Didn't need to. Life did it for me. Turns out, karma has better production value than I do." He nodded slowly. "Still, part of me thinks you're too nice." "Trust me," I said, taking a sip. "Niceness wasn't what got me here. Restraint was." We sat there for a while, watching the lights flicker across the city like tiny reminders that life keeps moving whether you're ready or not. My phone buzzed, and I ignored it. Miles glanced at it. "You're not even curious who that is?" "Nope. What if it's her?" I smirked. "Then blocking her is my cardio." He laughed again. "You're impossible." But later, after he left, I picked up the phone anyway. Unknown number. One new text. No name. Just a message that read, "Do you ever think about me?" Of course it was her. Who else could weaponize nostalgia at 11 p.m.? I stared at it for a long time, sipping my whiskey. The old me, the one who used to argue for closure, might have responded. Might have asked why now, or what for. But this version of me, the one who'd crawled through public humiliation, fake bankruptcy, and emotional bankruptcy, I just smiled, typed only when I need a reason to keep winning, and hit send. Then, because poetic timing matters, I blocked the number before she could even see it delivered. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and laughed quietly. It wasn't the evil villain laugh, just the relieved kind. The laugh of a man who'd finally realized he didn't have to explain his healing to anyone. For the first time in years, I didn't feel haunted. The ghosts were quiet. The air in my apartment didn't feel heavy anymore. I turned on some old jazz, the same genre that used to play at the Langford party where everything fell apart. Except this time, I was the one who got to control the volume. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter. My assistant called to remind me I had a meeting with the board. We were announcing another expansion. Nova Forge was moving into AI-driven defense systems, a market we'd avoided before. The timing couldn't have been better. When I walked into that boardroom, everyone stood, clapping. Cameras flashed. Someone joked, "The man who came back from the dead." I smiled. "Resurrection's a team sport," I said. And in a way, it was true. Miles, the crew that stuck with me, even the betrayal, they'd all built the man standing there. Lydia thought she broke me, but she just rerouted me. That's the thing about pain, it's efficient. It burns off the nonsense and leaves you with precision. After the meeting, I walked down the street alone. People still recognized me sometimes. Handshakes, photos, compliments about that comeback. I'd nod politely, say thank you, keep walking. The truth was, none of it mattered anymore. The applause used to feel like oxygen. Now it was just noise. I ended up at my favorite rooftop bar, the one Clara had introduced me to months ago. The bartender smiled when he saw me. The usual? Make it double, I said. I watched the city again. The same view, different man. The air felt like closure. Somewhere below, Lydia was probably still rewriting her story, telling someone new that she'd been misunderstood. Maybe she even believed it. People like her always do. But I didn't need to know. I'd finally learned that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's disinterest. I was finishing my drink when Clara texted. Heard the interview. You sounded calm. Proud of you. I smiled. Thanks. Finally feels over. She replied, it's not over. You just stopped fighting ghosts. She was right. Later that night, I went home, poured myself another drink. Habit, not heartbreak, and scrolled through old emails. There it was, the first one Lydia ever sent me. The subject line was the future. I opened it, skimmed through her overly enthusiastic words about partnership, ambition, love. For a second, I almost pitied her. Then I hit delete. The past deserved the recycle bin. The doorbell rang. Miles again, unannounced as usual. Thought you might want to celebrate, he said, holding a bag of takeout. You looked way too serious at that meeting. I laughed. You're allergic to quiet nights, aren't you? Quiet nights are for people who don't have dramatic ex-wives, he said. We ate, drank, laughed about the absurdity of the last few years. At some point, he raised his glass and said, to the man who went from punchline to headline. I clinked his glass. To the friend who filmed it. He grinned. Worth every second. We talked until midnight, swapping memories like battle stories. Somewhere between the jokes and the whiskey, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Lydia was just context now. A story I'd tell once in a while to remind myself how far I'd come. When Miles finally left, I walked out onto my balcony. The city buzzed below, horns, laughter, life. I stood there for a while, just breathing. My phone buzzed again, another unknown number. I didn't even look. I turned it off, slid it into my pocket, and whispered, not tonight. Because revenge doesn't always scream. Sometimes it grins, sips whiskey, and moves on. I took a deep breath, watching the skyline blink like a pulse, and smiled to myself. The man I'd been 3 years ago, the one who begged for love, who mistook validation for intimacy, who apologized for being right. He was gone. In his place was someone calmer, smarter, funnier, and infinitely less available for emotional drama. I poured one last drink and raised it to the night. To the punchline, I said softly, and the joke that didn't age well. The city didn't answer, but it didn't need to. It just shimmered, loud and alive, exactly like me. And that's the real ending no one expects. The moment when you stop needing to win because you already did.